Hi, hope everyone can hear me. Tim Ard here. Welcome to Thursday Night Saws, live from Wetumpka, Alabama. We are training this week in Wetumpka with the Central EMC and finished up today. They've got some weather all around us right now, and so we had a smaller group to finish up. They had some sickness and some different things, so we ended up we're able to finish everything today, but we're still here in the area, and we'll be heading back towards Rome, Georgia in the morning. I hope all are doing well. Hopefully we'll have a good signal tonight, unless this storm screws it up. But got the space link up tonight, so hopefully it's gonna be able to do some good up and down loads here. But anyhow, we've had a great week here. It's been pretty good weather, but it has been super hot. I don't know about where y'all are, but it's was bumping, I guess, somewhere around 90 to 95 degrees, with heat indexes well up in the 100 to 305. So it was a little bit, I guess you'd say, sweaty out there. And we're in a pasture area, kind of taking down some trees. They're going to be using it for a kind of a loading site. So it's those trees are coming down, and it's no shade once we took down several pine trees. So it's a hot day out there in Alabama. Next week we'll be over in Gwinnett, Georgia, Gwinnett County up near Lawrenceville. We're going to be working with the Georgia DOT, a train the trainer program for their supervisors. Looking forward to that. We'll get up there, I think, Monday evening, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week we'll be working with them. And so we're got a lot going on. I think the following week we're back around Georgia with some LTAP stuff. So looking forward to the next 2 or 3 weeks. So everything should go pretty good, I hope. Hopefully we have people starting to check in here. Had some questions this week on came in on email, and let me see if I can pull that up here. And it had to do with fuel questions. And so I want to kind of address that, see what some of y'all's thoughts were on it. I know I've seen some different videos here over the past few weeks, people testing some different oils and that kind of stuff. Hey, Patrick Pollard, how are you? Hope you're doing well. But the fuel question came in from Jake, and basically it says, good morning. I don't know if you're looking for any more ideas for Thursday night saws or not. If you are, I was thinking a talk about mixed fuel might be interesting. Pump gas versus premixed for not just occasional users, but full-time professionals also. Cost versus benefits. Also, is there an advantage when mixing your own gas to mix 40 to 1 versus the recommended 50 to 1? Seems to be a lot of talk of that these days, and hope this helps. I am really enjoying the videos, especially the live on Thursday. So appreciate that, Jake, and hopefully you're going to be checking in tonight. Hey, Matt Sexton, how are you doing? But I hear the thunder rolling out there, so the lightning's around. But hopefully we've got things gonna stay kind of calm here for the next hour. But some good questions there, and there's a lot of different opinions and a lot of different oil manufacturers, and so many different things that can happen. But hey, Logger Jake, how are you? And so Jake, I think it was you that was writing about the fuel, so that's kind of what we're going to be discussing a little bit this evening. And any other questions? Let's see, Patrick. How long have you been an instructor? How did you get into the business? I started off doing service schools at the distributorship that I was working at in Atlanta back in about 1979, I guess, and 1980 for sure. And I then, in about 1983, became the warehouse manager and service manager for Meyer and White outside of Atlanta, who's the steel distributor at that time for Georgia. And so I definitely started instructing there. And during that time, about 19 and I guess it was 84, 85, Steel had a partnership with Soren Eriksson, and Soren was putting together some different demos and training and stuff for them. And in Georgia, I was helping with them as far as some service issues on saws and things. And then basically, I started working very closely with Soren, organizing things. And then I was hired from the distributorship to work for Steel Incorporated. And so I was the Georgia service manager at Meyer and White, and then basically I became the applications manager for Steel, traveling all across the United States working with the distributors. And also part of my thing was keeping up with Soren and his training venues. So I started working with that. Later on, after left Steel, Soren and I formed a company, and so we started. He had Soren Eriksson training, I had Forest Applications training, and we formed Game of Logging Incorporated together. And so that was it. And then later on, started to work with Husqvarna. We left Steel sponsorship and more or less started to work under sponsorship for Husqvarna. And then later on, Husqvarna licensed out my Forest Applications, and we started, Laura and I started training some instructors for them. And so that went up until about 2008. I came down with cancer, and so it kind of slowed us down. So since 2008, we're back at Forest Applications and traveling around the country. So that's what we do. But and I got into the business basically, Patrick, because it didn't have a whole lot left to do. I was working on in high school. I was working on or helping with school buses for the summer, and a lawnmower shop had contacted my instructor there, needing someone to do 2-cycle repairs, and I had been doing that in school a good bit, and so I took that job, and then I ended up. I was asked to go to work at a shop in Hiram, Georgia, and then after that, when he passed away, one of the distributors picked me up, and so that's how I got really started traveling around with it. So maybe that answers your question, but this is 39 years, something like that I've been involved in teaching as far as small engines. Started off on the technical side, and then later, all my time now is pretty much spent on chainsaw safety and maintenance and those kinds of things. Work with cities, county, state, tree care, logging, disaster cleanup groups, about anybody who operates chainsaws. So, hey Nick Pixel, how are you? Do you come up to the Paul Bunyan show in Ohio? We were at the Paul Bunyan show for, I guess, probably 10 years at least, I know. We had our Game of Logging finals there for several years. And also we had Arbor Games, Arbor Master training there. But I haven't been to the Paul Bunyan show since it changed from Hocking College. After they moved over the other one, and Hocking was involved in it, I started more or less staying busy on the training, so I haven't been back to the Paul Bunyan show in quite a number of years. I hear it's still doing pretty good. But we had several things there. We had our Game of Logging finals there for several years. We had Timber Sports, a major event there with Steel back years ago. And so we've done a lot at the Paul Bunyan show over the years. Actually, we were putting together a training center there, which was the Soren Erickson Training Center. I don't think it's called that anymore, but the instructor there is still doing quite a lot of chainsaw training there. So, David Vossler, good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Hope you're doing well. And John M., hello. Hello to you. So we got quite a number bopping in and out here. Going back, I wanted to discuss a couple things on the fuels. And yeah, Patrick, 39 years. I've never done anything else really, so I'm not in my 20s anymore. You're right. I just turned 65, so I'm still out there every day though. Those hot days kind of get with me a little bit, but I'm still out there kicking around a little bit. So hopefully I can keep going maybe another 10 years if I can. But anyhow, a couple things I wanted to kind of throw out there to get some people thinking about. And back in the steel days, I traveled around the United States. We had a thing we were putting together for the service department, technical services, on two-cycle troubleshooting, and also more or less for a warranty manual, that we were looking at all types of failures, engine failures. Some of them were, situations with the power units. Some of them were situations with adjustments. But we found that quite a lot of it was with fuel. At that point in time, there wasn't really much ethanol going on except for two-cycle racing. It was stuff that was put in there called MTBE. That was the oxygenator at that time. And I did a lot of travel around the country because it raised havoc. You go from say colder temperatures in New England. As soon as it started to warm up there, they would try to send it south, and it would cover all the way over to Texas, and even got into the western states quite a lot. MTBE, which is methyl tertial butyl ether or something like that, if I remember correctly, that was an additive that they would add, and they could add a certain percentage of it to the storage facilities. And what it did is it raised the octane and the volatility of the fuel. But what we found is it also raised the vapor pressures of the fuels quite a lot. And so it was quite a task. I did a lot of what they called read vapor testing to check those vapors of the fuel as it created. And at that time, you could look in your can, and a lot of times it'd be boiling. And you still see that in some areas of the country nowadays. Because of the volatility or higher ends, I guess you'd call it, the vapors off of the fuel, it creates a lot of pressure. At that time, it was, I think, to be a maximum of 15 psi, which is somewhere around atmospheric. That was supposed to be regulated to where it never went over that. And a lot of the fuels that we tested, it was higher than 25 psi. You could pour it in the can, and you could see it sitting there just building pressure. You had to actually open the cans quite often to allow it to reduce some vapor before you could actually run it through the saws and trimmers and things, because it would create pressures in the tank. Well, you can imagine, if you're familiar with the carburetors, the inlet needle pressure is about 4 psi. So you've got fuel that's 15 to 25 psi. You've got a situation, atmospheric pressure is holding on one side of the diaphragm, and then the spring tension is about 4 psi. And so at 25, it blows the inlet needle right off its seat, and all the fuel runs in and through the carburetor. And so in some cases, it caused quite a lot of havoc around the country. And so we did a lot with different fuel testing, octane boosters to be able to reduce some of that. And several products were damaged out there in the field, professional as well as homeowner, because of fuel related issues. And that's pretty much still the case today, in my opinion. Um, when you go from one area to the other, like I was watching quite a lot of the videos and looking on the internet at some of the writings and latest things that were out over the past couple of years on mix oils and fuels. And when you look at those situations, one oil in, let's say, upstate New York, and the fuel that's up there, whether it's winter or summer, will affect a two-cycle engine differently than, let's say, Atlanta, Georgia, winter to summer. And reason being there's different additives in the fuels, and some of them are detergents that are rolled in with different brands of fuels. Because if you look, I don't know what it is today, but it used to be, the best we could figure, about 2% of the fuel that was mixed, automotive fuel that went into two cycles and that kinds of stuff, was less than 2%, and that might have even included quite a lot of lawn equipment, but it's less than 2% of the fuels that's consumed. So they weren't really worried about what it did to a small engine at that point, and still today, because of the ethanol percentages. They don't think a whole lot of it either. The main concern is emissions off of the automobiles. And then they want those engines to stay clean, so there's different additives and things that meet the major engine and car manufacturers to be able to deal with that. And some of those things, they don't work very well with mixing oil and gas together. Kind of like you've probably read and heard about, ethanol fuel causes phase separation. Well, it's not really the ethanol, though, as much. It is a solvent somewhat, but it's not as much the ethanol as the moisture content that the ethanol attracts. And so that causes the fuel to separate the oil from your gas. Well, some of the additives that are in the fuels as it travels across the country, because of different blends, different altitudes, different cold and hot climates, different higher humidity climates, all of that stuff is blended to meet the automotive market. And I'm getting to this, that I see this person or this shop says, this is the oil I use, this is the best I've found, and you go from this brand to that brand. Well, those things change with a couple things. First of all, the area of the country, and then the other thing is the actual product that oil is kind of blended to meet its needs. And two-cycle engines by the manufacturers, different manufacturers, have quite a lot of differences in RPMs and heat and different materials that are used, and so it causes a lot of I guess you'd say variables. So it's something that I want to kind of go back in history just a little bit, and I want you to kind of think through this. I've got some things here just kind of scratched out. Let's see what this does, if it'll come over there. I want you to think about when I started in my shop, after I left one of the first distributors. I had a dealer that wanted to start a new location, and I ended up trying to buy it out, and more or less I didn't know what I was doing. I had a lot of customers in base as far as small engines, because I had built kind of a reputation, and so it was something that I found it to be important to know the business side of it too. But if you go back to the early 80s anyway, when I first started out, a lot of the fuel mixes that were out there, the first one that I had in the shop was 8-to-1. And I believe that was a Poland oil or a McCulloch oil. And might have been even Homelight at that time. And then I remember, Homelight came out with a 16-to-1. And I remember everybody at that time, customers and different representatives from distributorships and stuff, they were saying, they're changing all this and going to this oil and it's not going to hold up. And then all of a sudden, here came some of the products, the Echoes and those kinds of things that came in with the trimmers and all, and they had oil that they were canning. At that time, it was all in cans. You had to pop the tops on it, and that was 20 to 1. And you saw that also in some of the steel oil that came to the States at that time, and very much so for the concrete saws, the cut quicks, and those kind of things. The 20 to 1 lasted for quite a while. And then you start to think about the next one that I saw, and this was probably some of the Home Light and also some of the first Husqvarna oil and stuff. And these are all petroleum-based oils at this time, 32 to 1. And then you saw it come in at 40 to 1. And then all of a sudden it was 50 to 1. Well, then there was a lot of issues that came about, and people were saying, it's just going to mess up engines, it's just going to blow up. And in a lot of cases, it got a little bit tricky because in certain areas of the country, because of fuel, how it was stored, how it was aerated, oxygenated, all that kind of stuff, it started to get a little bit scary of how well it did lubricate in certain areas. And so as you look at this, I mean, and a lot of customers or operators of saws, they don't understand that, that was 8 parts of what? It was 8 parts of fuel to 1 part of oil. And so now it's 50 parts of fuel to 1 part of oil. And so that mixture has gotten quite a bit thinner. Well, about the same time that you saw the 50 to 1, there was a lot of Optimal products that was coming out of Europe, and more or less those Optimal products were mixing at 80 to 100 to 1, and everybody's saying, oh no, it's going to be an issue. And in a lot of cases, that Optimal worked better at 80 to 100 to 1 than you would have, with a 32 to 40 to 1 ratio. As far as if you tear down the engine, you'd see less carbon. You would end up still with lubrication that would work. I mean, if you looked at steel all in Europe and a lot of other countries where you had, I guess you'd call it more stabilized fuel, in other words, more stabilized gasoline, more pure gasoline without all of the additives and cleaning agents and stuff like that, that stuff worked great, and it still works great today. And then you have the AMSOIL types of synthetics and those kinds of things. They mix with the fuels much better in some cases. And you have all these different bases now, most of them synthetic, that do an excellent job. And I've found, just talking to people and traveling around, is that if it went back to some of my first customers that I had in the pro loggers around the country, going around to their sites, talking to them about different things, many of them back and I'm talking the late 80s, if they could find a 6-ounce Coca-Cola bottle, fill it up with 30 weight Quaker State, mix it up good, they ran it in the saws like crazy. And they never had any problems. They loved it, They started going to canned oils, at 20 to 1 and 32 to 1. They felt like they weren't getting lubrication as well. And in some cases, they might have not been. And I remember some of the first chainsaw kits, tool kits used to come with the saws. And one of the things that you had in the saws back then, it came and you'd open it up and say, what in the world is this popsicle stick for? And there was a popsicle stick. Later they were made out of molded plastic, but it was a stick that was in there to actually clean the carbon. You'd pull the exhaust off and clean the carbon out of the ports from the outside with a popsicle stick, so you didn't have the buildup to clog up the exhaust port. And so, but those engines ran like crazy. If you go back, a lot of them are still out there running today, and the McCullochs and the 33 Polands. I still see some of those. There's not much production going on, but there's still people out there cutting firewood with them. And you start looking at that, and a lot of that they were running just regular 30-weight motor oil mixed with gasoline, and so 6 ounces to a gallon in some cases, and so they lived. And so all of these ratios, are affected a little bit different, but it all goes back to the base oil. And if you look at most of what I understand, and I'm not up on all of the latest things that are out there. I've been reading a lot about a lot of the mixing oils that guys like, but I'm going to tell you, it's different from one area to another as it mixes and runs with the equipment, because of fuels, because of altitude, because of how they're maintained, how they're ported. All this kinds of stuff starts to add up. But all of these mixes, especially the 40s to 50s to 100 to 1s, if you look for that, it's called well, it's actually the testing that goes through for the, it's all of the synthetic oils that are based on it is the FASO, I believe it's called, and that's JASO FD, and so it's JASO FD. That if you look on any of the mixing oils, if it meets that JASO FD, it basically meets the requirements of most engine manufacturers as far as synthetic oil base. And everybody over the years, about TCW and TCW2 and that kind of stuff. That's 2-cycle water cooled, and that's always been thought of to be for outboards and that kind of stuff, because of it runs at a lower engine temperature. But the JASO FD, and there's a couple different variants. I think there's a CD and an SD or something like that has a little bit difference of detergents. But if you find whatever oil in that JASO FD, you pretty much, if it's met that, and you mix it to that specification that they have it, whether it be 30, 40, 50 to 1, 100 to 1, you're going to find that it's probably going to be a pretty reliable oil. But then you gotta really also consider that like I said, the elevations, the RPMs, the adjustments. I had quite a lot here over the past few weeks. We've been talking about the auto tunes and the M-tronic carburetors, and I've done quite a lot now with several areas, my customers, as far as the training, where they've got 261s, 271s, M-tronics, 362 M-tronics on the steels. You got the 550, 562s, 592s, with on the Husqvarnas with the auto tunes, and people have not really figured out how to calibrate them. And if you don't have it calibrated, or if it's an adjustable carburetor, don't adjust it within specs, you can end up, I don't care what kind of oil you have, you're either going to build carbon and cause issues, you're going to have too rich a running that's going to bypass and go down into the crankcase, so it's kind of compressing and flashing, and you end up with bearing problems and all that kinds of stuff. It all comes back to the particular unit, the operator, how it's maintained, whether the oil and gas is mixed, that's fresh, and there's going to be all kinds of different things. But as far as this brand or that brand, I tell you, just about any of them that are out there on the markets today, you're going to find that they will do the job up to a certain limitation. And one last little story, and then I'd like to know what y'all think. In some of the service schools they used to do around the country, and this was back with steel, and I was doing service schools for distributor personnel as well as key dealers. And one of the things that one of the service managers out of North Carolina had started doing in their schools, and then we carried it around most of the United States. We would take like an 024 steel, and we had 2 units. And we would start talking about carburation and adjustments and overspeeding, and it'd always get into this oil and that oil. We use this oil, they use that oil. And what we did is we wanted to show the difference in oils and basic heat and those kinds of things, adjustments. So before lunch, we would take and go outside And one of the 024s that we had, we would set it up and it had raw gas in it. No oil whatsoever. Just decent octane, about 89 octane, just straight gas. The other one we mixed at that time, and this would have been before synthetics, that would have been just, dinosaur stuff. And we mixed it up properly. The one with raw gas in it, we would take and we would start it up and let it run at about between 4,000 and 5,000 RPM. So we just jacked up the throttle screw a little bit to about 5,000 RPM. We set it out back and let it run. Sometimes we even went to lunch and came back. It was still sitting there at just above idle, 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. And so what we did is then we would take the other unit and we would run it on up. We would lean it out on the top speed, lean it out to about 16.5, 17, hold it there at that point and stock saw. At 17, 17.5, we could watch the temperature go up. We'd put a parameter lead on it, watch the temperature go up, and pretty much we'd continue leaning until it locked up. And we could do that. You'd see the temperature go up just past 500 RPM, 500 degrees on the exhaust, and it would basically, it would seize. Let it cool a second, you could start it back up. We would pull off the cylinder on that one, and you would basically see that you had scoring on the piston and all. After running the one with raw gas for 30 minutes, we could tear it down, piston looked clean as all get out, no problems whatsoever. And guys would just say, wow, I can't believe that. No oil in it. And so, when you start to think about it, why is that possible? Well, the upper portion of the chainsaw engine doesn't need all that much lubrication. If you've got too much lubrication up in that area, you're going to end up with some type of an issue, which is usually going to be carbon buildup and that kind of stuff. Or if the oil is too much of a residue there, you're going to see it pump by the rings. You don't have an oil scraper in a chainsaw. And so that can be a huge issue. Then the other thing that you start to think about is gasoline. As long as it doesn't get out of time, as far as it's a nice burn, so you got to have an octane that's high enough for a nice smooth burn, it actually burns fairly cool. And so if you would keep that RPM about 5,000 RPM, somewhere through there, that engine would run with no overheating of the piston, no swelling. And I could do usually 3 to 4 of those runs before I really started noticing any bottom end wear. But that's what would happen next. When you did 5 or 6 of those, you started to notice that there was some wear in the bearings, crankshaft and rod, that kind of thing, because that's where the lubrication is needed. And so that has to do with how the oil actually works. But when you start looking at the different situations with the fuels, that can really make a big difference in how that oil is going to lubricate. Ash contents, how much of a coverage you have, spray over, how much it compresses the crankcase, all those kinds of things start taking place. And then you have a lot of times, people want to add a little extra oil and that kinds of stuff. And oil raises temperature, and it's a 2-cycle engine that's nothing but an air pump. So basically, if that air and oil flow fuel mix, is too thick going in there, you're gonna end up with problems that show up, like lack of lubrication and stuff. So it's important to think through the basics on it. I don't know. Let's see here what I got. Is anybody still on there? I still see some views, but I don't know what happened to our chat here. Let's see. Anybody still have connection? I don't know if I lost it or not. Well, anyway, maybe the storm knocked it off here. If it doesn't pick back up here in a minute, I think I do have a recorded version, so we'll see how that is. Hi all, I don't know if I've got you back or not here. I don't know where it got cut off at, but I am making a hard copy of it, so I will get it reposted. But yeah, I don't know where I lost you. It was terrible thunderstorm. Seemed like I have good internet, then I end up with issues here on the chat. So hopefully we're back there. Let's see what we got here. All right, I put it over my phone. My space link went out, so I don't know what. I guess the thunderstorms. It's really rocking and rolling around here right now. So hopefully I've got you back for a few minutes. I don't know exactly what I ended up on. I was talking about 90 miles, and I looked down. I noticed that people weren't there, but I think I finished up everything I was talking about anyway, as far as the things I was discussing. I don't know what y'all got of it. Jake, what was the last thing you picked up? There were several people on at one time. Jake, looks like you're the only one that's on there now. Did I lose you again? The 50-to-1 era of oils. Did you see the part on the Jasso FD where I was talking about that? Hey, John Durant. Good evening, Keenan. How you doing? Is it hot in Canada? I guess what I'll do is I have the hard copy, and that should be. I hope I have all of it. It looked like it recorded everything, and I will put that back up. I'll post that, and then y'all can review it. Go back over any other questions as far as what my statements were, but. What do you have? Any other questions on the oils or other issues? But I don't know where I left off as far as the questions and stuff, Jake. Hot and humid in Canada, huh? Well, I tell you what, it's hot down this way. But it's not. I was looking. I saw everything on the news yesterday, about some of the new climate issues and things. I looked up this morning. You can go on, just put in, record temperatures, and there's all the states are listed and stuff. And some of the highs for today across the country were back to 1930, 1933, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Climate climate change has been happening a long time. I know that's an issue, but I don't think it's quite as fast as everything thinks it is. I don't know. What are your thoughts on premix like Aspen and Motomix? The Aspen fuel I used a little bit. Soren had brought some over from Sweden. Back in 1989, we went over and we were doing some tour to some forestries and went to some dealers over there. And in 1989, Aspen gas was in Sweden, just about every dealership. And then the steel Moto Mix also was out there. Probably a little bit different configuration than what we have in the States, but it was very similar. But it looks like the Aspen gas, I've got a bottle of it. It looks and smells and everything just like it did then. But I really haven't used either one too much for the past, I guess probably at least 12, if not longer, probably since about 2008 for sure, maybe 2006. I've run most of the time the True Fuel. I run True Fuel 50 in just about everything that I have, and so that's it. And you know, the premixed canned gases. You got the SEF with VP Racing, you got the Aspen gas, Moto Mix. Those things are pure gasoline. In a lot of cases, it's somewhat of a synthetic gas, according to which one it is. And then it's most always mixed with that JASO FD rated, synthetic oil. And so it stays blended. There's definitely no ethanol or anything, any kind of an oxygenator that's going to separate the fuel. It doesn't pick up much in the way of moisture, and so there's not a lot of phase separation. They package it, with nitrogen, so that there's nothing that's going to get in it as far as air until you crack the top on it, and it lasts a long time in the machine also. It does, it enables it to get air in that case, so you will pick up over a period of time maybe some moisture or whatever in your tool, but it's something to where it works with that very, very well. So it's hard to beat that, because I'm gonna tell you, my opinion is, if you go to a gas station and you really check the gas, the next time you go, or 6 months down the road, you're probably going to have a different gas blend that comes out of that pump, and that's major brands, because that's what they're doing. They're moving fuel across the country because of heat ranges, altitudes, winter additives, all that kind of stuff, different agents for cleaning the engines and this kind of stuff, and it all reacts differently to mixed oils in 2 cycles as you go around the country. So let's see, Patrick, is Husqvarna coming out with a chainsaw that is fuel injected? I haven't heard anything on that. I'm going to be filming with David Breeden the calibration process. We're going to use, he's got 3 brand new saws. We're going to take them out of the box and go through the calibration process on the auto tunes this weekend, hopefully. And so I hope to be posting that next week. I'll recheck with him, but last I talked, there was not really a discussion of fuel injected. They're getting a lot better fuel mileage and still meeting the EPA requirements with the auto tune. A lot better fuel mileage than the fuel injection that's on some other things. So I don't see that. I think their major push, as most of the manufacturers, is trying to do everything they can with battery units, because that's going to be an issue on the West Coast markets, California and that kind of stuff, pretty quick, and then environmental issues also across the country. And the battery units, as far as consumer trimmers and saws and pole saws and that kind of stuff, is selling like crazy. So That's what they're focusing on right now. But according to what I've saw and heard, as far as Husqvarna, the auto tune is very, very efficient. So that's probably where their time will be for the next few units. Let's see, I've been running the Aspen daily and have been happy so far. I don't get the obnoxious fumes from the exhaust. Yeah, that's what I find on the True Fuel. I've got a bottle of Aspen that I was waiting on hotter weather, and then I haven't tried it yet. But I think it's pretty good mix of fuel. Keenan ran a great 2-day chainsaw safety and operation session earlier this week, and I included some of the pole saw material with great feedback. Great. Yeah, I've had some pretty good comments off the pole saw stuff. It's kind of basic, but for the city and town business, as far as training goes, it's definitely pretty pretty detailed for them. So it's more than they've ever had. But when it comes to the arborist side, I think it's still a little bit weak. Got to come up with some more things there, and I want to do some other maintenance versions. That's for sure. John Durant, I had a lot of problems with my Husky saws during the summer months, but zero problems when I switched to the steel M-tronic saws. Are you saying? Vapor lock situations with the Husky saws? And is that what you mean, John? Had a lot of problems with my Husky saws during the summer months. It's according. I don't know what models you have, what type of fuels that you were using. Definitely, I think the M-tronic, and then also the auto tune is a little bit more forgiving as far as adjustments. Is to be able to run different fuels in different temperatures, elevations, and humidities, and that kinds of stuff. So you're using some of the Aspen up in your area, Keenan? What model on the M-tronic are you using, John? Yeah, I don't know which Husqvarna units you have. A lot of that has changed with the auto tunes. Were the units that you had on the Husky saws with the auto tunes, and there's just so many different issues. Parts of the country, like we talked about earlier, was looking at different fuel conditions in those areas. So you're having issues with the 261. Yes, was 261S or 261C? 96 degrees. It is hot up there. Also had hot starting issues with my 562. Switched to 462. And so far so good. Woo. Lightning outside. Hope it doesn't bump me off again. I haven't, Logger Jake, I haven't had any issues with the 562 XP. It has pretty much run and calibrated itself ever since. I've had 3 of them, I guess. Every one of them has done great as far as the auto tune. I had trouble higher elevations on some of the first M-tronic that I had on the steel. I had a 362, the first one with the M-tronic. I had trouble at higher elevation with it, but now that I understand the calibration process on the steels, there wasn't all the issues, I think, are gone. And I've gone through, I had some videos that I did on that talking about a couple 261Cs that went back through the calibration on it. If you haven't looked at that, that's really important to get the M-tronics working correctly. And then I did another somewhat video going through. I don't know if you've seen it or not. The last week, I cut apart a video that the dealers were getting in a webinar for Husqvarna back a couple of years ago. And then we're going to be putting together the video to show exactly how to do it on several models. One of them will be a 562, and I think he's got a 592. Something else, we got 3 brand new units in the box that we're going to be working with this weekend to go through the calibration, because he's figured out too that it's not out there for any of the end users to understand. And it all goes back to really, what do you expect the adjustment of the saw to be, whether it's a adjustable carburetor or an M-tronic or an auto tune. And I go through this every single day in training. Is an operator needs to understand, first of all, the air filter has to be clean. Then you start it up, let it warm up to some amount of temperature, go wide open, and make sure that you have flutter in the top end. In other words, it comes up and levels out. If you got a tachometer, you can check to make sure it's not over the free spin RPM. Then you let it come down to idle. Your clutch should disengage. It should sit there and idle in all positions without going dead. And then it should immediately accelerate back up to high speed when you hit the throttle with no hesitation. If it does that, there's really no adjustment or calibration to do. That's all you need. And but if it doesn't do those 5 things, then more or less you need to have it adjusted, whether it be screwdriver or you go through the calibration on the M-tronic or the auto tune. The thing that I have found, there's a lot of confusion and misunderstandings about how to calibrate those units, and so that's what we're trying to work with now, trying to get a little video together, because the Steels, it's listed in the operator's manual, but the Husqvarnas, it's only in dealer material, and some of the dealers are confused about how it should be calibrated. So we're going to try to get it set up right here in the next few days. So I don't know how many people will see it, but it'll be on the site anyway. Let's see. These batteries operated tools are nice, but these batteries don't last very long on these saws. I hope they do better job developing better batteries. Yeah, Patrick, I think they will. I know there's several different things that I was looking at. In Europe, they have some group chargers and things like that are very fast, and some of the newer batteries are charging in half the time, and they're holding charges longer. So I think it is going to be coming up. So, and John, let's see, what do you see? 261, 462, 661, 201. And those were, that's what you have on the Steels. Those were running fine, right? No vapor locking or anything on those. 261Cs for Keenan. So you did the calibration process, Keenan, and everything leveled out, huh? That's cool. And were those units some of the earlier 261s, or was that the 25 seconds and then 30 seconds? 25-second idle, 30-second high speed. And the earlier ones were just idle at 90 seconds, so I don't know, it didn't seem to calibrate quite as quickly. The Husqvarna, I don't know if you saw the video from last week that we put together, but more or less it's 5.5 minutes at idle on the auto tunes, and then you have to load it, keep it loaded for a little over a minute for it to actually work. So they've changed from cutting cookies to making sure that you like rip with it for over a minute so that it keeps the engine under load, which is kind of weird, but it supposedly worked. We're going to find out with the 3 units this weekend, I think. So I think the Husky calibration was too frustrating to learn in this heat. It's a little bit hot. There's not a whole lot of difference in it. You just have to set it down and let it idle for 5.5 minutes, and then you rip it, to kind of keep it under load for about a minute, and then it levels out pretty good, John. So it doesn't take really, except for the idle longer. It doesn't really take any longer under load. So when you go to high speed, it's about the same. Let's see, Keenan says, Steel also needs to make their fuel solenoid valve. So Steel needs to fuel solenoid valve issues public as well. So what was happening on that, Keenan? I think you mentioned that before. What was the issue with the fuel solenoid? Yeah, okay, so you had the older 261, so it's 90 seconds. Yeah. I tried the newer 25-second and 30-second on one of the older 261s also, and it seemed to calibrate out also. So I don't know. It'd probably work on that too instead of just the idle for 90 seconds. But the latest chip is a little different. So they have tech bulletins on the fuel solenoid. I haven't seen any of that I know of. I don't guess it wasn't on the 262. It was on like the 261 or something. I mean the 362, not the 262. Updated solenoid valve and fuel filter recommendations. I'll have to look it up. I haven't seen that. And what was that on the 261Cs? Is that what that was on that you're referring to, or is that other models? Yeah, a lot of Logger Jake. A lot of the cities and counties and state that I work with, they've bought the 261. They bought them pretty heavy, and that little saw is pretty impressive. That the new that hasn't made it to the States yet, but I was noticing Great Britain has it, and that's the new MSA 300 battery saw that Steel has. Got a 20-inch bar, 325 pitch, full profile 325 pitch chain, and it cuts with the 271 in the tests that I saw with the shops over in Great Britain, and that should be a pretty impressive saw. I've got one ordered if it ever shows up. They haven't come to the States yet. But let's see, Logger J2. I probably shouldn't have seen them, but I did. What was that on, Keenan? Oh, you saw the tech bulletins? Yeah. And that's on 261Cs. Was that the hot start? That is one of the problems with the hot start with the solenoid valve, where when it was cold, it would start up and then it wouldn't restart. Oh, I'd like to trial that in a couple weeks. That's cool. Let me know. Let me know how it works. I don't know if y'all hear it or not, but it is cracking outside now. There's a huge storms coming down from Tennessee down through Alabama. Yeah. Yeah, that could be some of the stuff throwing the calibrations off, Keenan. But I don't know exactly how that thing worked. I saw you have a similar thing in that video that I had for the auto tune, the solenoid unit, how it cuts in and out. Let's see, Logger Jake, we specialize in cutting all the junk trees out of lots that past loggers high graded over the years. So having a light saw is important to me. Some days all I do is cut hundreds of small beech and birch. That's pretty good. Some utilization. What do you put that in? Just clearing the lot, or is that going into some kind of chip or something, or what? Biochips or something, Logger Jake? I'm in Alabama. We're down in where are we at? Wetumpka, Alabama. Been down here working with the power companies, John. So we're not home. I know it seemed like it's been raining and thundering and storming up there in Rome, Georgia, for the past couple of days. But we're down in Alabama, Wetumpka. But it's coming through here tonight, boy. I mean, it's going. We had to finish up the training today because they figured they're going to be out on calls tomorrow because it's some pretty strong electrical storms. Just scrag and firewood, leaving the better timber species room and sun to grow. Oh, it's a little site prep management. That's pretty cool, John. I mean, Logger Jake. Resetting, yeah. Timber stand improvement, I guess they call it down this way. Going through and cleaning up stuff. Do you know Nathan Soki? Where's Nathan at, John? The name sounds familiar. What does Nathan do? I know there's a Nathan, not sure on his last name, up in Wisconsin. But is Nathan in Georgia? Yeah, 261C would be a perfect saw, Logger Jake, for the TSI work. Timber stand improvement and a bigger saw makes for a tired person. That thing's got, you can put, they run 18, 20-inch bar on it and at 325 pitch, and goes over pretty good. No, I don't know Nathan with Alabama Power. I don't do all that much with Alabama Power. I helped put together some programs for them in the training center below Birmingham, back several years ago. But both the guys that were instructors there in their training facility, they've both retired out, and I don't know everybody over there now. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Nathan. I may know him, may not. The name doesn't strike a bell. I know several Nathan, but I don't remember the Zoki. Yeah, so Southern. Yeah, there's another training center I worked at several times south of Birmingham, and I've had a lot of the Southern Company, doing work with them around the southeast. But Alabama Power, in Alabama, I work a lot with the EMCs, so mostly the membership corporations. I think we need to get Mr. Newstetter on here one night. Oh, he talks funny, Yeah, Dwayne is he's quite a character. I think a lot of him. Known him for years and years and years. One of the best instructors that I've come across. But he talks funny, Keenan. But he's I don't know. I guess he's still doing some stuff, but he's got other people out there hitting the bushes. So I don't know. I know last I saw he was in Tibet. He's back in Canada now, but he was in Tibet going to a one of those mountain monasteries for a little retreat. Yeah, it'd be nice to have a little reunion. I talked to Dwayne last year sometime, I think he called. But it's been close to a year, I guess, since I've talked with him. I know his wife had some health issues. I haven't been updated on that. I don't know where he's at on that deal. But she had some health issues they were working through. Still looking for a 25-inch hexa chain for my 500L. You got a 50 gauge bar? Did you see what I'm going to be giving away on the 28th, Patrick Pollard? You've seen it. I'm going to have a drawing on a 25-inch hexa chain. That would fit great on your 500i. I think you're already listed on the drawing. Yeah, I don't know whether Dwayne talks like a Canadian or not, Keenan. He's got one of those. He doesn't have much of an accent. I'm just kidding, but he just talks weird. That's what it is. Tell him I said that if you bump into him. Yeah, you already listed. I got 25. But if you want to buy one, I just got a message from a dealer there in Rome. She's got them. So if you want to buy one, I went over there and bought a 20-inch. Got it on my saw at home. And but she's got 20s and 25s and 50 gauge, I think. I think she sent me a message on Monday or Tuesday. She shipped 2 of them to somebody had called her from New York. So she got in several loops a few weeks back. She ordered them early. Probably got everything Steel Southeast had. But they haven't showed up the files yet. But they keep promising they'll be in before the fall booking, so the dealers will start to get them off of that. I shouldn't be listed. My bar is a 50 bar. I should be listed. That's what you're saying. You should be listed. Yeah. I think I've got you on the list. I'll look right now. I can tell you, Patrick. I have the list right here. I have been putting it all in place. No, I don't have you on here. Did you send something? I don't have you on there. You need to comment. You need to comment, Patrick, either on YouTube or on Instagram or Facebook. Hey, Tim L. Yeah, that's what I have. It's a 25-inch 50 gauge. That would fit you, Patrick. I'm gonna go ahead and put your name down here so I don't forget. I'm gonna put a question mark beside it. You have to send in a thing on just comment on that YouTube where it's got the prize giveaway. Just comment on that, and I'll have you entered. I put down a question mark there beside it. All y'all can do that. I'm sending out a 25-inch 50 gauge hexa chain and a file. I have a file, brand new file. I'm gonna send out with it. Tim, if you need a 32-inch, you can contact Heather's Outdoor Power in Rome, Georgia. She's a steel dealer there. She's listed in Georgia Steel Dealers, and I think she's probably got a 32. I think she's got 20s, 25s, and 32s in the hexa loops. There's 50 gauge, so I don't know what you have on that, but I think while she's got 50 gauge, I don't think she's got any 63 gauge. Can you run that chain on a top handle saw? No, John. I think that once it gets going, they're probably going to make it in some smaller versions. But unless your top handle saw will pull a full profile 3/8 50 gauge chain or 63 gauge chain, you can't put the hexa on there. That's it's a little bit big for that, but so it's not going to be on a top handle for a while. All right, Patrick, I'll have you covered. I'll put your name in there to draw, so we'll know on the 28th if you got it or not. You commented on YouTube? I don't know, when did you do that? I didn't have it on here. I'll have to look back in there. But I don't show you on the list there. But I put it on there. I got you. But I'll recheck. But I got you on there. I got a question mark beside it. I'll look it up. I might have missed you somewhere. No hexa loops for the 201T. So you're running 50 gauge too. Okay. Are most of you running 50 gauge? Not running 63s on any of your steel bars? I know there's different areas. Most of it's kind of standardized since all of the distributors are kind of on the same boat, but I don't know. I still see a lot of 63 on the 325 pitch stuff, but most of it is 50 gauge. Let's see, Logger John. I modified some round chain with a square file to mimic the hexa. Might work for your top handle. See, John, you modified semi-chisel like 3/8 extended pitch with a square file to mimic the hexa. And Keenan, you got down here, John, maybe look into full chisel square grind. He's wanting it for a 201T. So that's 3/8 extended pitch. It'd be kind of hard square grinding that stuff, isn't it? Now the semi chisel, if you try to square file up to the corner or the other, you're going to end up with a V up there. I tried square filing 325 pitch semi chisel back years ago, and it's not going to work much. But anyway. My theory is try anything once, huh? Sometimes it may work, never can tell, but I don't think that small chain with square filed or hexa is going to work too much right now. Yeah, the low profile chains are semi. Actually, you can get full chisel in the 91 series of Oregon now, so it's a full chisel, but it doesn't have enough tooth surface to square grind. You might be able to take and dress, a 5/32 wheel or something that might be able to, but you'd have to have a grinder that maybe on a Symington or something like that, but that's a mighty small surface to square grind. And definitely I think you'll see it in the next couple years, probably on the hexa. They'll go down to a smaller file and be able to do that. So Patrick, Heathers has got the files on order, but the hexa files have not shown up yet. And I was able to beg, borrow, and steal a couple from a distributor that got in a small supply, but they haven't got any retail supply yet. So I think it's going to be before October. You'll start seeing the files. The grinder discs are out. Heather does have one of those, or some of those, but she doesn't have the files have not come in as of Monday or Tuesday when I heard from her. Yeah, full chisel 325 will square grind really nice, but semi chisel it doesn't do too well on the 325 either. But 325, I played with a lot of 325 pitch, square filed, semi skip, and full skip. We did a lot of delimbing and stuff in red cedar and white pine with that. And that chain will cut. I mean, fast, very fast. Even full complement 325 with square file is very, very smooth. Let's see, Loggerjake. Square hand file 325 chain works well till you're halfway down, then I go back to round. So as the tooth drops back, it makes it hard, huh? I square filed the full chisel, not semi chisel. Square filed it all the way back many, many times. But that was a like Steel 26 series, and I think it's the Oregon 23 series. The 33 series is, I think, in the Oregon is a little bit smaller profile tooth. It doesn't work as well, but I think they're 23 series, and then Steel's 20 series was pretty easy to square file all the way back. Let's see, Keenan. Are you talking about 325 pitch on the 201? Change it over to 325 pitch using that low profile, that narrow curve 325. That said, with the Hexa, how would OSHA feel about that? Um, OSHA doesn't really have anything to say about that. That wouldn't be an OSHA issue, other than possibly it might be a modification, but that's not a safety issue. But Hexa chain is definitely listed as a professional chain. It would be a yellow link, so it would be considered a professional chain. But you're not, the only thing that's out in Hexa is going to be full profile 3/8, and that you're not going to be pulled out on a small 201 or 201T especially. Yeah, in Canada they have a few other things that the Department of Labor up there looks at, but they prefer to have the low kick. But even on that, the manufacturers, anything, I think air brake is at 3.8 cubic inch also. 3.8 cubic inch and up is considered professional, and down, anything on the smaller saws, even on professional series smaller saws, top handle climbing saws, that kind of stuff, they want the reduced kick because that's how it comes out of the factory. So, but some of the newer chains in low kick are boring pretty good and cut pretty fast. Like the narrow curve chains and stuff are pretty fast cutting and green labels. So, but right now the Hexa isn't. It's going to be a pro only large saw. So maybe later on the small stuff, I hope, but not right now. Patrick, you say, why do these chainsaw companies not sell chains that are square file right from the box? You talking about a chainsaw sold in a bar and chain combination with square filed on it? It's considered a specialty chain, a professional specialty chain, and so back in the mid 80s, all the manufacturers got together and basically came up with the kickback testing, and then also certain safety features and bar and chain combinations they agreed upon were green label for 3.8 cubic inch and down, and then you could go yellow label 3.8 cubic inch and up. And most all of the smaller saws are going to be equipped out of the box with a green label chain. And the testing that they did on square filed shows it's a more aggressive cut, and so it reacted higher or faster or heavier on the kickback tests, and so it was considered a professional chain and a specialty chain. So that's how it was looked. And at that point in time, the only place that you ever saw square filed chain was on a long bar combination, usually full skip or semi skip on the West Coast, cutting Douglas fir or redwood or something. You didn't see it many other places. Hey, Donnie Hudgens, how are you? Good evening to you. Yeah, the thing is, Keenan, that just about all, when you look at the government agencies and even disaster cleanup groups, they strongly promote staying with a smaller saw with reduced kick saw chain. That would be green label chain, or even on the larger saws they're putting green label chain. But you got a couple different things now. Steel saws come with the X series chain, which you've got a very low kick. It's actually labeled as a green on a full profile 3/8 chain. So, it bores pretty well, it cuts pretty well. And then some of the newer Oregon chains are also that way. So, the Vanguard series full profile 3/8. That's a green label chain on just about every power unit. So that's something that you could do there in the intermediate and larger saws that run 3/8. 325 pitch is still, unless you go with one of the lower kickback versions, is still considered a yellow chain. But now the newer green label 325s are they meet the kick test, and I assume it used to be. I assume that the regulation, or not regulation, but the testing that goes on is the same in all of North America. So as far as the testing facilities, because I think the kickback machine is in Guelph, Canada, at Oregon's facilities, and then Modern Headwear out of Winnipeg had the testing facility for a while. BC there, he did most all of the testing for Canada for quite a number of years. They produced the Modern Headwear, most of the leg protection, chaps, and those kinds of things for many, many years. Canada, that also came to United States. John, you say, I have a couple top handled saws, so I'm going to swap out the sprocket and change to the 325 on one saw and compare the two chains side by side. Yeah, some of the smaller saws are coming with that narrow kerf 325. It's a .043 drive link though, and that you're seeing on some of the small saws and also on the pole saws coming out. And it is a green label chain, I believe, and they call it narrow kerf. I will say this, from what I'm seeing with the cities and county business with the pole saws and small saws, it's pretty easy to bend a link on it, so you gotta keep bar tension and stuff like that up. But it's a very fast cutting chain, so I think you'll find it pretty reasonable. I think the time has come for these companies to sell square ground chains right out of the box, and today's saws can handle it. I think that you may start seeing, Patrick, as soon as this works out, especially with steel, on at least your 3.8 cubic inch and up with the hexa chain, which will be somewhere in between round ground and square ground. But I don't know. There's not that many places and people that can maintain square ground chains. So out on the West Coast, you've got some grinders, and very little hand filing going on. And then on the East Coast, there's no grinders, and you got a few grinders, but most of it is hand filed. And it's mostly enthusiasts like yourself that have tried it and like it and practiced it. But it's not your average chainsaw operator that's out there with the firewood cutters and city, county, state stuff. Have you cut with the 325-043 that comes with the Husqvarna? Yes, I have. And that's what I was just talking about, John, is it's pretty impressive chain, but I have noticed, I mean, I didn't have any issues with it. I didn't run it all that much, in different conditions, but I ran it some just to see how it cut and stuff a good bit. Some of the city and town stuff, especially on pole saws with that 043, it's pretty easy. If you let it derail, you'll bend a link. So it's supposed to be a little bit different hardening process on the 043 drive links, but it tends to bend a little bit. But it's very fast cutting, very narrow kerf, and a lot of guys are liking it, for climbing saws and smaller saws used out of buckets and climbing for sure. All right. Well, gentlemen, my battery's about to die here, and I'm gonna get the the session together, and I've got it recorded. So well, it'll go on the live thing on YouTube, but I've got it recorded too, I think. So it's got all the comments and stuff will be on the recording, so you can kind of see through all of that. And I appreciate everybody dropping in tonight. It's been great. And next week, I think Thursday night, I'll be back at the house after we finish with Georgia DOT. So next Thursday night, we'll pick up the discussions, and I'd like to know your comments on what we talked about, or I talked about earlier on the fuels. We'll go from there. Any other topics that you have, I would try to get them into discussions on Thursday nights. So it's growing a little bit. I appreciate everybody dropping in, and hopefully you'll find these discussions to be useful. I've learned a lot from you guys, and so looking forward to next time. So y'all have a great night, and I wish you all good sawing, and be careful out there. Talk to you next time. See ya.